If Charles Darwin could have worn a watch, he would have worn a Rolex Explorer. You know why? I'm going to tell you why. I'm sure you heard about the evolution theory. Well, allow me to grab a little note because this is scientific stuff and I'm not a scientist. Anyway, here we go. The theory of evolution. We know that as the theory of evolution, but the long term is theory of evolution by natural selection. And it was proposed, of course, by Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace in the 19th century. In the theory of natural selection, organisms produce more offspring than are able to survive in their environment. Those that are better physically equipped to survive grow to maturity and reproduce. Those that are lacking in such fitness, on the other hand, either do not reach an age where they can reproduce or produce fewer offspring than their counterparts. You also might know this as the survival of the fittest. Now, back to Rolex, because both evolution and survival of the fittest applies to Rolex as well, and especially to the Rolex Explorer. We talked about survival of the fittest. Now we have to talk about Mount Everest, the highest mountain in the world. In 1953, it was first successfully conquered. And you might think, and many of you do, is that the Rolex Explorer was worn to the top of Mount Everest by the Rolex-equipped expedition. But it wasn't. So please make a note. Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay didn't wear a Rolex Explorer to the top of Mount Everest in 1953. But soon after the successful conquest of the highest mountain, Rolex did release the Explorer. From 1953 to 1955, Rolex produced the Explorer 6350. The very first Explorer. It had the characteristic 3, 6, and 9 on the dial, and there were many dial variations, always with the Arabic numerals, and one of the most coveted ones, one of the prettiest dial variations, might well be the honeycomb dial. The very first Explorer looks a little bit different than the one we know today. But the one that came after, the 6610, that was made from 59 to 59, more or less takes shape of the Explorer we know today. Evolution. Remember that word. In the 6610, we also see the Roman numerals, and one other thing that is very important to the Explorer is the Mercedes hand. The hour hand has this very peculiar round with a Mercedes logo inside. The next step Rolex took with the Explorer was a big step because it was the Explorer 1016 and it was in production from 59 to 89. That's a massive 30 years. And that makes it the Rolex that was in production for the longest time. Evolution and Rolex. I have to address that briefly right now because since the birth of the Explorer, each next generation took a step upwards in quality and in precision. So better materials were used, better finishing, but also better movements, of course. So in the 1016, that was actually the first Explorer that had the words superlative officially certified chronometer on the dial. And it's still there. After the 1016 came the 14270. As you see, there is absolutely no logic or logical evolution to the reference numbers so far. Anyway, that model was in production from 89 to 2001. And then in 2001, this watch was launched. This Explorer is the 114270. And It looks like the 36mm Explorer that is in the current catalog, but it isn't, because this model was discontinued in 2010. In 2010, Rolex shook the world. The version that was presented in 2010 at Basel World didn't seem like a logical evolution, because the case size that had been 36mm for ages was grown to 39mm. And the reactions were mixed, very mixed. Also because of the dial, because the Arabic 3, 6 and 9 on the first versions of that watch were not with a luminous material or white, they were solid wild white gold, so they were quite shiny. And since the Explorer was meant as a tool watch, it was born as a tool watch, it was a little bit strange to see a tool watch with shiny numerals that were just a little bit harder to read in the dark than the ones outfitted with a luminescent material. So what happened in 2016? Well, you could say it is a kind of survival of the fittest, because the Mark I dial died, so to speak, and it was replaced by the Mark II dial. And on that dial, the white gold 3, 6 and 9 were eliminated. They were replaced by more logical, sensible, better to read in the dark numerals with a luminescent material. So that's the version that survived, so to speak. So the current Steel Explorer is the best Rolex can do. What is weird is that there's also a Bird of Paradise version. There is also this very exotic one, the Steel and Gold Explorer that came about on a deserted island. I think it's like the sea iguanas on the Galapagos Islands. They are just weird. Anyway, so that Steel and Gold Explorer is a mix of luxury and tool watch capabilities, and it is so odd that, unlike the Galapagos iguanas, I think that version might go extinct pretty soon. And since we're nearing the next Watches and Wonders, I think Rolex will probably announce that they have cancelled that. I said Bird of Paradise, but maybe I should call it the Sea Iguana of Explorers, and maybe a titanium one will come about, because since we're speaking of evolution, I think having an Explorer in titanium, and we know that Rolex can do titanium because they of course built this monstrous titanium dive watch, that could be where evolution takes us in the upcoming years. So, what do you think? Charles Darwin would have worn an Explorer. Would you wear an Explorer? And if so, which of the references I showed you today would you wear? Do you prefer? Please let me know in the comments. And if you liked this video, please subscribe, like, and come back real soon.